No. I mean, it was giving me a note. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Inside Scoop with Sue. I swapped out Thursday with Kamira, who will do her interview on Thursday because Dr. Kristin Carothers was only available today. And Kristin is my friend, and I wanted to interview her. So today we have the distinct pleasure of being with Dr. Kristin Carothers, a clinical psychologist who just always has wisdom to share with us that changes our parenting and our day. And so today, we have not yet talked about this. This is about high conflict co-parenting. And you are immersed in that. And so I want to start with just define it for us. What is high conflict co-parenting?
Okay, so good morning. Thank you for having me, Sue. I'm happy to be here. I think the way that we'll start with defining high conflict co parenting is co parenting, whether you're in an intact couple or in a separated, never married, or divorced couple, is hard because two people are coming to the table to try to raise a person or beings, and they have very different experiences, very different needs and wants many times. The high conflict co parenting distinction is when parents can't agree on anything when it comes to how their child is parented, whether that be financial issues, education issues, visitation, or how much time the kid spends with each parent. And I'd like to make the distinction that this isn't something that just happens for families who are going through divorce or for families where the parents were never married. This is something that many different types of families experience. And so when it's high conflict, it means that there's so much animosity, there's so much disagreement that the kids get lost. And it becomes mostly about the parents' needs and wants.
You know, you say it, and I think, why would anyone behave that way? But I know I would. I know I could find
That's
myself
so
in that.
real. That is a very genuine response because I think many times people think, oh, that'll never happen to me, or I would never behave in that way, or oh, my kids always come first. And what we see in high conflict co parenting dyads is that even though parents say or they want to believe that their kids come first, their conflict or their need to engage with the other parent in a negative manner is actually what is dominating the relationship.
There's just so much pain around it, right? Like
Uh-huh.
someone in that relationship, if it's high conflict negative, um, someone was hurt, right? And
Exactly.
maybe both of you are hurt.
Exactly.
And so, how do you deal with this crazy negative emotion about the person that you have to get along with to put your kid first? How do you do that?
I think it's really important to acknowledge that hurt does happen in relationships. And we've been, I guess, conditioned in this society to say, oh, well, I'm over it. Well, I don't care about that person anymore. Or I've moved on. I'm not angry, right? When there are some very specific things that may have happened in the relationship that led you to feel hurt, angry, disappointed. And so I think the first thing is that parents have to be real with themselves about the fact that relationships are hard and that there could have been things that happened in the relationship that were related to the child or not related to the child that hurt and caused pain. And a lot of times it takes the parents each being in their own individual therapy to process those issues and to also think about their history of being parented, whether or not their parents stayed in an intact relationship, did their parents separate or divorce, were their parents ever married, what types of signals and messages did they get from their parents about parenting or getting along with another parent, what type of family support have they received. Those are all really important factors that are individually based. And so before we go into a family therapy model, it's really important that individual parents have their own therapy to process their moods, emotions related to the original relationship or the lack of a relationship.
I'm just trying to think about, like, my world has just crashed.
Yes.
I have 8 million things to be responsible for that I didn't before, because
Mhm.
maybe in that relationship we divided and conquered, right? So someone
Right,
handled this. And so the
right.
world is crashing in on me. And now the first thing I have to do is get therapy. Like,
Mm.
where does that typically fall into the highest priority at that moment?
No, I think people are really just trying to survive. When a relation, so hierarchy of needs, are my basic needs met? Food, shelter, warmth, right? And then trying to figure out how to motivate themselves to go forth in the world every day. And so therapy is not necessarily the first thing that you think of. If we think about the breakup of a relationship as a traumatic experience, it is a trauma for children, right? So on the adverse childhood experiences checklist, which is a measure that's used to determine a kid's exposure to trauma. We know that it has long-term negative effects for their physical and mental health outcome, including premature death, right? We know that divorce or a parent's breakup of a relationship counts as one of those adverse childhood events. And so if it's an adverse event for your kid, it's got to be a major trauma for you. Now, I want to make the caveat that there are some people who are in relationships that are abusive or toxic, and it may be that the breakup of the relationship, while traumatic, is also something that is important for safety reasons. And so I want to make that distinction. But if it's not an issue in terms of physical safety, right, and the relationship is just ended, that is a trauma. And when traumas go unprocessed, people internalize some of that grief, some of that anger, and they may react in destructive ways without meaning to or without being aware. And so it is going to be really important that parents eventually get there. So I would say 3 to 4 months out, it's about time for you to talk to somebody.
So some of the dust has settled, and
Yes,
you can now look at yourself and say, how do I get my act together, like
yeah,
for me and my kids?
exactly.
Okay, so now I know that this is the kind of thing that we think we would never do again, but
Mhm.
that it happens where one parent brings the child into what the break was. Like, your dad cheated on me,
Mhm.
or and how does that, what does that do to our kids when we bring them into a kind of adult storytelling?
Okay, so while it may happen naturally for some people because it's what was modeled for them, or they look at their kids as a source of support, or they say, I don't want to lie to my kid, it actually is developmentally inappropriate. So when your child is a child under the age of 18 to 21, they are not your peer. Adults are peers, children are peers, right? And so there's some information that goes laterally from adult to adult that should never go adult to children, right? So in the event that there was a major rupture and someone was quote unquote responsible, it is not the best course of action to disclose to a child all of the details and the facts. The reason it's not appropriate is that child is half of you and half of that other parent. And if they are told all of the details, they may feel responsible or think that they need to align with one parent over the other to protect a parent. They'll experience feelings that are conflictual because they love both of their parents very much, or they want to be able to love their parents very much, but they may be getting some signals that it's not okay to love both parents. So one of the things that I've heard before is, oh, well, your mom left us. No, no. A parent, this is lateral. Relationships break up, right? If a parent is no longer involved in a child's life, that can have lots of different reasons. It may be that they've gotten signals or direct information from the other parent that they are no longer welcome. They may be ashamed. They may not know how to face their children. They may not necessarily have things going on in their own lives in terms of their mental health that prohibit them from being involved. However, it is best that parents give neutral information to their children. It is not fair to place the burden of your relationship or the demise of your relationship onto a child. Children need the opportunity to be able to develop their own relationships with individual parents.
So
That's
that's,
hard to swallow.
well, that's probably where a therapist or a good friend or a relative comes in, right? Like, you
Yeah.
tell those stories to them, but not to your kids.
Yes.
Okay, so there are scenarios where one parent is always disappointing. the kid in terms of making plans to
Mhm,
having
mhm,
visitation, whatever it
mhm.
is, like Wednesday nights canceling? If you're the parent left with the disappointed kid, how do you navigate that?
So first you have to navigate your own feelings of like anger and disappointment. You don't want to see your kid sad. You don't want to see your kid disappointed. It also brings up your own feelings from the relationship and your disappointment there. So you need to work on your own feelings first because they're valid, they're very real. The moving with to how do you help your child deal with it. One of the things we do as cognitive behavioral therapists is we help people identify patterns in behavior. So we want to look at what people say versus what they do, right? So we want to give your child the opportunity to prep, right? Or to prepare for what typically happens. And we want to set them up for success. So, number one, if you have a child who is being told by another parent that they're going to come visit or that the parent is going to pick them up, and that parent consistently doesn't show, it's time to have a conversation with your child before going into the next scheduled visit. That conversation might look something like this. I know you're really excited about seeing your mom, and your mom has made the plan to pick you up this Friday at 3. There have been 3 or 4 times in the past when your mom said she was going to come and she didn't show up. I was really disappointed. It made me feel really angry, sad, and hurt for you. I know how much you want to see her. Here's what we're going to do. This is your mom. She can see you when she wants to see you. I want you all to have a relationship. On the other hand, I know that there are some times when your mom may not come through or show up the way you want her to. So we'll have this plan. Mom says she's going to show up at 3. Typically, she may be a little late. We'll say from 3 to 5 will be the time when we expect mom. If mom doesn't come at 5 o'clock, we've got plans. If mom does come, you go for the weekend and you have fun. Okay. Remember, mom not showing up is not because you've done something wrong. That's mom's issue. Mom showing up is mom making an effort.
Everything about what you just said, first of all, moves me so much to like be able to change it from blame and just kind of have this neutrality of facts. But also, it's such a tone of the kid's the priority. Like everything
That's
about
it.
what you just said.
That's it. This is not about you and what you think of mom and what you all's relationship was. This is about making sure that your child is confident, is secure, that your child has some information, that your child knows it's okay to feel hurt, that your child understands different perspectives. Perspective taking is big, right? We want our kids to understand it's okay to be disappointed when somebody's behavior doesn't match their word. It's okay to give people opportunities, but to give them opportunities within a certain frame, right? So, not saying, oh, you can just come anytime all weekend. No, we have established that Friday is the day. Please get here between 3 and 5. At 5, we have to move on with our weekend. If you're going to be late, please call. I'm happy to meet you somewhere to make the transition easier. Is it better for me to bring the child? Some parents will say, well, I shouldn't have to do that. If your child's a priority, you do that. Well, if your child's a priority, then you prioritize your child being able to have contact with the other parent, even if you may have to take a few more steps to make that happen. If it's really about your child and not about you.
Oh, it's so hard. It's
It
just
is.
I'm
It is.
yeah,
It is.
it's it's really about separating your own pain and
Yes.
not trying to get even, not using the kids to get even. But even in my own marriage, there have been times I'm still married,
Yeah.
but even within that structure, I definitely have felt that way. Like, I kind of want to take him down,
Especially if you think take them down. If you're the parent and you think that you're doing more of the heavy lifting, and it's like, oh, you don't ever have to do the heavy lifting. Why do I always have to do it? Up, you didn't do your heavy lifting. See what happened? See what they said? I'm human. I've said these things in my parenting relationship and in my and parenting of my child. And so then I have to check myself and remember, like, what are you good at as a parent? And what is the other parent good as a parent? Um, I I'm gonna say something that is gendered, and I hope let me not even make it gendered. I'll talk about a role, right? So, the role of the person who has the primary caretaking responsibilities, this is the person who may be the warm and fuzzy, or who might be just the person who gets most of the things done with the kid. Sometimes they'll feel exhausted and say the other parent never helps. They don't know what it's like. Well, they may not help because you haven't asked, or you haven't told them specific ways they could help. They may not help because you've sent signals that you got it and it's better the way you do it. And now they're like, hey, you got it and I'm cool with you having it and I'm going to go do my thing. So if we want people to do more and to take more responsibility, we've got to give them opportunities to do that and realize things may not get done the way you want them done. So the kid's clothes may not be ironed, but did the kid get dressed? The kid's meal might not be quite as balanced as you would have it be, but did they eat? Right. And so if we're co-parenting, it's like we got to get down to the most basic things. Are they fed? Are they in school? Are they safe?
I think at the core of all of this is having an understanding, which I hope you'll give us, about why kids, when there are two people parenting, why kids are better off with that.
Okay. Parenting can be done with one person. It is not ideal. It is extremely exhausting. We need social support for parenting. If you are parenting alone, you need the support of family or friends. If the reason that it's best to have at least another party involved when you're parenting, and why it's best for kids to have two parents, is if we're talking about biological parents, the kid needs to know both parts of themselves, right? There's information that they can learn. There are ways of coping that they learn that are nuanced, that are not just based on one perspective. And so if you only allow a kid to be with one parent, you're taking away that ability for them to know the other part of themselves. You're taking away the ability for them to learn about other people's perspectives of what or ways of living. You're taking away that ability for them to attach to another figure, right? So if something should happen to you, and now they have no relationship with this other parent or this other family, do they think they're alone in the world? Step parents can also be very helpful, and step parents can also sometimes do harm. If you are a person who is a step parent or a step caregiver, it's important that you understand your role and your function. There may be times when you're the day-to-day person, you're with the kid more than they're with their biological parent, but your role is not to replace a biological parent, it's to be an addendum to. Right. So instead of saying, like, well, I've taken over, or the kid thinking, well, I don't need another parent because I've had this one, you have a bonus. You got a step parent, you got two biological parents, you might have two step parents and two biological parents. These are bonus. This is additive. This isn't to cancel anybody else out. Okay. If there's a need to cancel anybody out, we need to think about why, as parents, we have that need, because that's an individual need. That's not a need based on the child and what's best for the child. I want to, Sue, I know I'm talking a lot, but I want to bring up a point
That's
about.
why you're here.
Okay, sorry. About parents who may have substance or mental health issues, right? Because many times parents with substance abuse issues or mental health issues may be encouraged not to participate in the life of a child. And I think we've got to be careful about that. We know we want to protect the child. So if the child's safety is in danger, physical, mental health is in danger, then that's an absolute no-go, right? But if a parent has a substance abuse or mental health issue, rather than blocking the child completely from having a relationship, we want to provide a structure for the kid to build a relationship that is safe with the parent. So if there's a need for supervised visits, the visits are supervised. Perhaps they're not overnight. Perhaps there's a meeting at a public place where there's an activity that's done. Perhaps there's a connection with the child's individual therapist who can facilitate those sessions or those meetings. But the goal is not to totally cut off because the parent is struggling with some other issue.
And kids do better in those environments when they get to see the other parent?
Kids need to see their parents.
Yeah.
They need to know they have both parents. Think about how it would feel for you if you went to school every day and heard people talking about their parents, divorced, married, not married, separated, and you thought, oh, I don't even know who my dad is. I've never seen my mom. Oh, I hear people talking about this person, but they won't let me see them. How would that make you feel? Confused, hurt? You might internalize it and think there's something wrong with you, that this person has rejected you, when that's not necessarily the case. And so it is very important that parents are understand the functions of their behaviors. Why are you allowing or not allowing a parent to have contact? Why are you encouraging a child to understand all the nuances of you and their parents' relationship after there's been a breakup? Why do you need the kids to see you as the best parent or the parent who was taken advantage of? Do you have a need for your kids to parent you, to take care of you because of your own background and your relationships? Be aware of why you do what you do.
Because we're human and broken and
Yes,
all of those reasons.
everybody.
Everybody. Okay, so let's get into hope a little bit, because
Yes,
there's always hope, right?
yes.
So when you're working with exes, co-parents,
Mhm.
whatever phrase you use, do you see that they can get to a better place? And what does that look like? How do you
It
get there?
depends on what the parents' motives are. It depends on what the parents' motives are. Or your function, motive sounds nasty. It depends on the function of the parent, what the parent will be honest about the function of their behavior being. Is their purpose to control? If their purpose is to control, they will not be successful in co-parenting therapy with me. If a parent really, or parents are really invested in figuring out a way that their kids can have time with both sets of parents, and if the parents respect that the other person can make good decisions and cares about the safety and well-being of the children or the child, we can make movement. When people are at a place where they no longer respect each other, where they actively engage in antagonistic behaviors, where they nitpick about every single decision, where they can't say one positive thing about the other parent, then I know I'm in trouble. Well, I'm not in trouble, the kid is. Because what happens over the long term is these kids become adults who have severe anxiety and depression, and who are very angry with their parents or angry with the world, and they don't know why.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a setting where there's been low conflict, right? So maybe there's not been, the kid didn't know the other parent, there was a step parent around, and there's been relatively low conflict, then you see people who are typically able to thrive and who live good lives. But when there's a high conflict level, where there's a lot of discord, and where kids have been put in positions where they can't say things about one parent in front of the other parent because that person is triggered, or they're not allowed to make contact, or causes a big problem in the household, or they have to go to court, or they have to be represented by attorneys, and they're exposed to all of this drama, that can lead to very negative long-term outcome.
Okay, so I moved into hope too soon because that was not hopeful.
Oh, I'm so sorry. There is hope.
Yeah.
If people are willing, I'm sorry, I got so Debbie Downerish. There's hope. Okay, so let me talk about there is hope when people finally get on the same page about what they want for their child or their children. I want my child to have a good life. I want them to be healthy. I know that you're a good parent. I don't like the way the relationship ended. If we can figure out a way to work together, I'm willing to move forward. Sometimes feelings get hurt. The child was living with one parent, and then the child decided they wanted to live with another parent, or the court said that the custody arrangement was going to change and feelings got hurt. Acknowledge that hurt, and let's look at what's happening with our child. Child is actually doing well in this household setting. I'm the academic person, so I'm still going to support the academics, but maybe they need to live in your house. Let's figure out a way that we can look at a calendar together and plan out activities. Let's make sure that our kid can go to an activity that is my activity, even when it's not my weekend. So when parents get to the point where they say, this isn't my weekend, it's every weekend is our kids' weekend. It's just that they may be at my house, right? Then they can start to do things. Oh, you take them to soccer. I'm going to bring them to you because that's your thing, even though it's my parenting time, right? Because this is my kids' weekend. It's always the kids' time. And where we get confused is thinking that it's your time because you're the parent. It is the child's time. This is the child's life. When parents can get to that point where they're like, oh, my kid is a real person and will be independent of me and will have things they want to do with me and have things they want to do with their other parent. And that's okay, because it doesn't mean they don't love me as much. Or because they're not in my house doesn't mean that I can't still parent them. That's where the hope comes, when people stop seeing it as their parenting time and start seeing it as, this is my child's life and this is their time, and I want them to have an enjoyable life, and I want them to look back on childhood and say, man, I enjoyed my childhood. That's when there's hope.
Well, that's a perfect note to end on, because I do feel hope with that comment. So thank you, Dr. Kristin Carothers, for once again being here with us. You always have such wonderful advice. Thank you so much.
Thank you.